Happy is the birth of Buddha. Happy is the teaching of Dharma. Happy is the harmony of its believers. Happy is the life of those who live in harmony. Hi, I'm Edward Wilkinson from Bonhams here in Hong Kong, and today we're going to be speaking about early Buddhist images from Gandhara. So in the northwest reaches of the Indian subcontinent, the Gandharan civilization was established. And this came about as a result of Alexander the Great conquering the region around the 3rd century BC. Now this is falling some 300 years after the birth of Buddha, but the population there in Gandhara remained mostly connected back to the Greco-Roman tradition, but it was around the 1st century AD that we see the population convert to Buddhism. So it was in the 1st century AD that we see the interest of the population convert to Buddhism and create remarkable temple complexes, and particularly sculpture rendered in typically stone, also some examples in stucco, some in wood very rarely, and of course bronze, which very few examples survive. The legacy of the Gandharan aesthetic is very clearly visible throughout the Asian plateau. The Gandharan region into the Swat Valley in Pakistan, up into the Kashmiri Valley, and then up into China, and spread there from China into Japan, down into Korea. So particularly within India, you see the Buddha image evolve and from the Kushan period into the Gupta period, where perhaps one could argue the Buddha image found its greatest representation there. But then once you went down into Sri Lanka, you see a very different aesthetic. Their figures became a little more hieratic and stylized. The garments that were treated in a different way. Similarly, up into China, the rendition of the face, a prominent moustache that was evident in the earlier period. And then once you got into Japan, the aesthetic changed dramatically again. The way in which the garments were organized, the way in which the figure presented themselves. The sculpture under discussion today is remarkable on many levels, not only in its state of preservation, but also its large size. He stands at about 130 centimeters. Starting at the base, you have a small narrative scene of the future Buddha Maitreya. Depicted, he is seated in the meditative pose, flanked by pairs of worshippers. 2 males on the right, 2 females on the left. They may well also be donors. Then on the side of the pedestal, you see the 2 wonderful representations of floral motifs that are ubiquitous throughout the Gandharan tradition. But here his toes are rendered beautifully. Toenails defined, the slight bend of the toes. It's really quite remarkable. Then as we move up, you see him wearing this remarkable, voluminous sangati or robe that is rendered in the manner that can only be described as a toga, of course connecting it to its Greco-Roman tradition. Another important element of this sculpture is the subtle evidence that the artist wanted to capture the sense of movement. His left leg is slightly flexed with his knee projecting forward, and this has caused the fabric to pull tight, suggesting that he's stepping forward. Additionally, in his left hand, he's holding the garment, again an indication that he is in motion. So the artist has captured something quite wonderful here to give a sense that the Buddha is not stationary, such as the idea and the tradition, that it's ever evolving, and here the Buddha is in movement. With this example, the right hand, which would have been carved as a separate element, and you can see that by the notch just about midway on his forearm, the right hand would have been held in the gesture of reassurance, which referred to is Abhaya Mudra, and it's a universal concept of reassurance. The Buddha has many identifying features called lakshanas, and here you can particularly see it evident on the face. And we start at the top here with the cranial protuberance, which is called the Ushnisha, where his flowing locks run over the top. That's to indicate his incredible brain capacity. Additionally, you see a small circle or tuft, the urna, between his eyes, and then his eyes himself, which are one of the most enduring and classical representations or ideas of the Buddha, is that he's heavy-lidded, meditative state with his eyes barely open, suggesting that he's aware, but he's in a state of meditative bliss. These images, we can only speculate the way they were lit, but clearly were visible to the worshipper, that they would have engaged with the image and tried to meditate on and emulate the concept of the Buddha. He is not to be worshipped, but all of his good deeds, all of his actions, all of his teachings, that the worshipper would have been engaging with this sculpture, seeing him in his enlightened state, understanding his life of coming from the palace where he had all the trappings and luxuries as a prince, going to the austere state of almost becoming emaciated, to then discovering the middle path. For the worshipper, they see the perfect enlightened being before them, and this is what they wish to emulate, is get to that point of becoming enlightened. So I'd like to close by sharing a small passage by Shantideva from the 8th century that I think really captures the Buddha image and the concept. He dispels delusion. Where else is there such a saint? Where else is there such a friend? Where else is there such merit? Thank you.